people don't know. They don't know what's beyond the outside show. The Ramchal already gave Musar to his generation, of people who went through the motions of even learning, that they were so involved with the chitzonius of it, never bothered, she says in Mesilas Yesharim, with Yerushalayim, with Chasidus, real Chasidus. It all was just a facade. It all was just a chitzonius. And when that happens, people feel threatened by other people who aren't exactly like them. Ashkenazim from Sfardim, and Sfardim from Ashkenazim, and Hasidim from Isnagdim. And if you don't wear the same yarmulke as me, then I feel threatened by you. When I first came to Eretz Yisrael, so the different communities here tried to convince me that I should be on their side or whatever, because whatever you find in Eretz Yisrael is nothing like America. I couldn't make conclusions here from what I knew in America. This is a different place. So someone told me, you should know over here, whoever wears a black yarmulke is antisocial, anti-Israel, anti-everything pretty much you could imagine. This was before virtual reality. I said, it's hard for me to believe that just putting on a black yarmulke makes a person think like that. He said, no, it's true, you'll see. And then, about a week later, one of my children came home from Cheder. And he said, Tati, we learned something very, very important today. Our Rebbe told us that anyone who wears a kippah sruga can't be a Yirei Shamayim. He said, we know why? I said, no, why? He says, because the Yirei Shamayim scrapes through the holes. So I didn't want to contradict his Rebbe, but I didn't want my son to remain with that feeling. So I said to him, Shlomi, you know, I was in Me'ashorim last week, and all of Rav Arulis Hasidim wear big kippot srugot, knitted yarmulkes. Now I can't believe that not one of Rav Arulis Hasidim is a Yirei Shamayim, because the Yirei Shamayim escaped. He said, maybe there's exceptions. I said, good, let's leave it at that. Maybe there are exceptions. It's not yet necessarily the yarmulke that makes you a Yirei Shamayim or not. Could be that what's under the yarmulke could be a Yirei Shamayim, even if it's a kippah sruga. So we ended with that, and I know he took it his way, I guess. The only exceptions could be Rav Arulis Hasidim, but... That's what the Netziv says. When you live such a shallow external existence, then you're choshed that everybody who's not exactly like you is an apikoros. And it's a dukkha. And that's why there was tremendous sinas chinam in Bayesheni, because everybody was choshed everybody else for being a tzeduki and apikoros. And there are definitely things that people do that need tikkun. No group, except for tells maybe, but otherwise, no group doesn't need some kind of tikkun. There's always place for musar, for tochacha. Any ahava that doesn't have tochacha is not real ahava. So say chazal. But there's a difference between tochacha because you care for somebody else and bittul, where you consider the other person a koros. Consider them totally out of the picture. Always say that that's the problem. People who don't appreciate who they are feel threatened by other people. And the only way that they can feel secure is by knocking down other people. When your identity, the Katz Rebbe said, Im ani mitnei shani ani, v'ato ato mitnei sh'ato ato, אז אני ואתה. אבל אם אני מפני שאתה. ואתה מפני שאני. אז אין אני ואין אתה. If I know who I am, and you know who you are, then we both have identities. But if I don't know who I am, I just know I'm not you, and you don't know who you are, but you know you're not me, then that's not an identity. And a negative identity is not an identity. I don't know who I am, but I know I'm not you. Then the only way I can feel not threatened by you is to knock you down. And unfortunately, that's what the Vilna Gaon said. We live in a world where everything is decided by chitzonius, how the person looks on the outside, but what's really meaningful, we don't have a clue. So everybody feels threatened by everybody else who doesn't look exactly like that. The pants are over their socks or under their socks, or what kind of socks they wear together, or if they don't wear socks at all. Rabbi psychologist. Rabbi Tversky, in one of his books, says there was a person who felt extremely insecure and that he only recognized himself by his clothing. And he was afraid to go to the mikveh because he'd forget who he was. Came Erev Yom Kippur, he had to go to the mikveh. Even Litvaks go to the mikveh Erev Yom Kippur. So he decided that he shouldn't forget who he is. He tied a red string around his finger loosely. So when he saw the red string, he'd remember who he was. He went into the mikveh. The string came off his finger and got tangled around somebody else's finger. They both come out of the mikveh. He's looking at the other guy with the red string on his finger. He says, "Look, I know who you are, but who am I?" When you only identify yourself by the chitzonius, and you become like the fool that the Chafetz Chaim speaks about, he said it for a different reason, but different mashal, who fits my purposes too. A person once came to an inn. He begged the innkeeper to give him a bed for 2 hours. He'll pay him double the amount. It's a storm outside. He needs to rest for 2 hours. The innkeeper said, "I'm sorry, there's no empty rooms." He says, "There's got to be an empty bed. Maybe there's a room with 2 beds in it. There's one empty bed." He said, "There is. But I gave that room to a general, and I promised him I wouldn't put anybody else in the room." He said, "Look, the general's asleep. I'm only going to spend 2 hours, from 2 to 4. The general doesn't get up at 4 o'clock. I'll come in quietly, leave quietly. He'll never know I was there, and you'll get double the amount for the whole room." He said, "Okay, but you have to promise me. I'm going to come and wake you up at 4 o'clock. You get out of that room quietly, that the general should never know you were there." You sleep for 2 hours, 4 o'clock, the innkeeper comes, wakes him up, he gets up really fast, gets dressed, runs out of the room. As he's going out of the room, he sees the mirror in the hall, looks into the mirror, and he sees that he's wearing the general's clothing. He says, "That idiot innkeeper, he woke up the general and forgot to wake me up." Says the Chafetz Chaim, just because you're wearing the general's clothing does not mean you're the general. But we think that the clothing makes the person. And don't think that clothing's not important. It is important. In the army, they wear a uniform. Very, very good reasons. And B'nai Torah wear a uniform, a hat and a jacket. And people, different persuasion, wear their uniform. It's important to wear a uniform, to know where you're shaykh to. But never make the mistake to think that the uniform makes you the person. You're a person who wears a uniform. A policeman wears a police uniform. But anybody who puts on a police uniform is not a policeman. And there's a place for various groups. Klal Yisrael needs them. Chafetz Chaim said, we're like an army. Army has different divisions. They even wear different uniforms. The Navy doesn't wear the same uniform as the Air Force, and so on. So there is a place for different uniforms, different divisions. The Chafetz Chaim said that Loshit Lava, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to put all the tzaddikim on a circle. He's going to stand in the middle to show that there could be tzaddikim, all different approaches. But there are harbe drochim lamakom. Many, many drochim that are emes. And when people think that there's only one emes, and they have it, and that's not emes. It says, if this is the Mashiach, ha-emes ne'ederes. Ne'ederes means it won't be around. It'll be missing. And yet the Gemara says, Na'aseis adorim, adorim, v'holechas. There'll be flocks of emes. There's flocks of emes. Why is it missing? Say the Mefarshim that when emes, each flock thinks that only their way is emes, then there's no emes. The emes is from everybody together. Klal Yisrael needs Chassidim, Misnagdim, all different kinds of approaches to Yiddishkeit, as long as they are Nema, the Torah Shebichsav and Torah Shebal Peh, and have a Masorah that was built by Gedolah Yisrael, then they're legitimate approaches. There are illegitimate approaches to Yiddishkeit too. They're not on the circle. And as long as you're on the circle, and that doesn't mean that everybody on the circle has both feet on the circle. Sometimes every group has a few toes off or whatever. So those things need to be corrected. And that's a place for Musar. That's a place for Tochach. But not for Bid. And there's a place for people not doing the same thing. I always say, Purim is the Yontif of Achdus. It's the only Yontif in the year when Jews don't celebrate the same day. Some on the 14th, some on the 15th. That's Achdus. Achdus is not being able to tolerate somebody who's exactly like you. That's called cloning. Achdus is where you can tolerate somebody who's not exactly like you. Miami, we had one shul for many years. And then a group of people broke away from that shul, my shul. The Tainas, they weren't happy. The shul was too frum for them. It was too shivish, whatever. They wanted something more, less yeshivish. Wasn't Zionistic enough. And other Tainas they had, Tainas on the board of directors also, not just on the rabbi. And I really felt that this was destroying Achdus of the community. And if I would have reacted the way that I wanted to initially, I probably would have gotten spears and speared these people through. We're destroying the Achdus in the community. But one of my Balabatim, who was himself a Kanoi, begged me not to react until I spoke to Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky, who was in Miami for the winter. I spoke to him often. He said, go and speak to Rabbi Yaakov before you react. So I went to him that Motzei Shabbos, and Rabbi Yaakov told me the following. He said, I'm an old man. I know what I'm going to tell you is going to be hard to swallow, but trust me and do what I tell you. He said, you probably want to spear these people through for destroying Achdus of the community. He said, but let me tell you something that the Alter from Slobodka told me. The Alter from Slobodka said that a house that doesn't have a Beis HaKisei, the whole house stinks. You need somewhere for the soulless to go. You can't please everybody. There's always going to be bellyachers and grumpers and people who are not happy with the good things. So give a place for the soulless to go. Give a place for the waste to also be. So help them. Give them a Kohen on Yontif if they don't have a Kohen. Give them a Sefer Torah if they don't have a Sefer Torah. Help them in every way you can. Just one thing. Never let them back in your shul. That's Achdus.